career run through regionals and likely sized events. And just one of the absolute best competitors from North America going up against one of the absolute best competitors from Latin America. Just a great way to start off day one of action here. And of course, you cannot afford, any missteps in this stage. I know that Diego actually took 9th in Latin American rankings, and you needed to make the top 8 in order to get an automatic day 2 invite. So Diego barely missed that, even though he had an amazing showing in North American Internationals. And it looks like the handshake is underway. We do see the prizes shortly, and it looks like Drew Kennet is going to be the first player starting things off here.
Yeah, jumping right into the action here. Looks like Drew is going to be going first.
Drew looking through his deck. Of course, the first turn of the game tends to be the moment where you take a look at your deck, you take a look at what options you have available to you, and from that point on, you try to get a game plan going for the remainder of the match, depending on what prizes are down on the down in your prizes. Now, of course, Drew is actually playing a deck that came out with this Unified Minds expansion. Drew actually wants to make use of that Mewtwo and Mew GX tag team Pokemon to the most of its potential, adding cards like Welder to add as many energy into play as possible. This is Drew's game plan, and Drew hoping to execute it as fast as possible. Now, of course, Diego on the other side of the field. We see that Pikachu and Zekrom GX. We've seen it in action at North American Internationals. It almost took the championship at North America, taking 2nd place, and here it is again in this brand new Worlds format. Hopefully, at least for Diego, hoping to one-up that 2nd place finish from North American Internationals.
Yep, he'd definitely love to see that. He's putting all of his trust in his opening day here into that deck. We did get to see Drew open with a pretty interesting deck. He's got a bunch of GX Pokemon in his deck, and he's going to be throwing a lot of those into the discard pile. He wants to make use of his ability of his Mewtwo and Mew tag team Pokemon so that he can copy all of these different attacks and really just pinpoint which one's going to help him the most in this certain matchup here.
Now, we saw Drew get a reasonable setup, ending with that Mewtwo and Mew GX as his active Pokemon before he passed the turn over to Diego. Now, Diego does have access to plenty of search cards. Actually, matter of fact, one of the key things that I want to stress about this particular matchup is that I think it was expected coming into this weekend for both of these decks to do particularly well because they both have a lot of items that help search their Pokemon out. Things like Electromagnetic Radar, Cherish Ball. These items are going to be key for Pokemon to start getting set up at a much faster rate than a lot of these other decks that don't have access to these items because of the loss of cards like Ultra Ball from the format. Now, we are going to be seeing Diego start to set up, and because he's got that Pikachu and Zekrom active already, he's hoping to start accelerating some energy onto these Pokemon, and if he can get some sort of like a full blitz going early on, then Diego's going to be in really good shape. But at the same time, he has to be wary of all the different attacks that Mewtwo and Mew GX can use. Once these GX Pokemon are either on your bench or in your discard pile, Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX can use its perfection ability in order to use the attacks as its own. So that's why if you accelerate some energy from a card like Welder, for example, and put it onto this Mewtwo and Mew tag team, you're going to have a lot of different attacks available to you. And if you have the right attack for the right circumstance, then you can really put Diego on the back foot.
So right off the bat, we saw that Dedenne GX was dropped. He used his ability to find himself 6 fresh cards. Unfortunately, he had to discard 2 reset stamps with that, and he only plays 2. So he will not have any hand manipulation for the rest of this game here.
Reset stamp, another key card from this Unified Minds expansion, being able to basically be a one-sided end for those of you who have been playing the game for a little while now. Shuffling your opponent's hand back into their deck and having them draw cards equal to the number of prizes they have available. When your opponent's down to something like a single prize card, it can be an absolutely devastating maneuver, and having no access to that for the remainder of the game can prove to be dangerous for Diego here. And now we see a turn 2 Welder from Drew as he starts his second turn of the game, having only 1 fire energy in his hand. Now he plays a Rainbow Energy, has 120 damage on his Mewtwo and Mew GX, and Great Potion will reduce 50 of that, but still 70 damage on that Mewtwo and Mew tag team before it really starts to get going. That's a dangerous place to be if you're Drew.
Yeah, Drew really doesn't want to commit energies to a Pokemon that already has damage on it. Unfortunately, this looks like the only route that he has available to him, so just going to have to commit that Great Potion in there and try to find something to prevent damage from occurring. He wanted Diego to not get an attack off on that opening turn. He was hoping that he wouldn't be able to find the correct cards and able to start dealing some damage. as this Zapdos really just makes the opening turn pretty awkward for Drew here. Looks like Drew does have that Cherish Ball, so he's able to find himself a Dedenne as well, and he can get pretty aggressive. Actually, he's going to discard a lot of Pokemon. That's huge for him. Going to be able to have all of those as potential attacks for his Mewtwo and Mew tag team Pokemon, and was able to find another Mewtwo and Mew tag team as well off of that draw.
I didn't get to take a close look at which Pokemon he discarded, but just the fact that he can discard multiple Pokemon on this turn, this is actually a good thing for him, and the Dedenne actually ends up being a useful part of the that what's usually, you know, a side effect, and a bad side effect at that, ends up being very useful for Drew, as he gets to draw 6 new cards and add additional attacks to his discard pile. Now, we did see Drew pass the turn over to Diego. I'm not exactly sure what
he used his GX attack, and I believe that he used Latios' GX attack with Clear Vision, and that just shuts off both Pokemon players' GX attack for the entire game. So he's going to make both of them play some nice, fair Pokemon here.
That's actually a very interesting strategy going up against that that Pikachu and Zekrom GXs. We do know that it's got plenty of very powerful GX attacks available to it. Things like Tag Bolt GX, and of course, a Alolan Raichu and Raichu itself having another powerful GX attack available to him.
The main thing he wants to avoid is he doesn't want the Pikachu and Zekrom tag team to get that 170 damage snipe onto a Dedenne and end up taking 4 or 5 prizes in one turn. That would be such a swing that he's just going to try to avoid that as best as possible. And the easiest way to do that is just get rid of those GX attacks.
Absolutely. Now, Diego is choosing to kind of spread his energy out onto his field. We see 4 different energy cards on 4 different Pokemon here for Diego, and we just see so much damage from the Zapdos onto that tag team Mewtwo and Mew tag team, and that's just a lot of pressure being applied to Drew, as he only has 2 energy in play as opposed to the 4 on Diego's side, and both of those energies are in play onto a Pokemon that has 150 damage on it. So that's only 120 HP left on that Mewtwo and Mew, and that's just very, very dangerous territory of your Drew. I don't exactly know how comfortable he feels. I do know that he's been playing this deck for about 2 weeks now, and he's felt really confident. As a matter of fact, I met him at the airport when I was on my way here, and he felt so sure of several matchups, including this one actually. He feels really confident, and I know that one of our co-casters, Jeremy Jallin, was playtesting with Drew actually, and he also felt like the matchup was really heavily favored for Drew in this particular sense. But Diego seems to have gotten the advantage very early on here, and it's on Drew to try to come back. But it's just an uphill battle when you have so much damage on your Pokemon.
Well, it looks like Drew is starting to find his rhythm here. He does have that Greninja GX in the discard pile, so he's going to have access to a Haze Slash if he wants to. It's 110 damage, and you get to shuffle yourself back into the deck. So he can avoid all of that damage on his Mewtwo, eventually turning into 3 prize cards. Instead, he could just throw everything back in and try to set up a welder onto a new Mewtwo and Mew later in the game. If he can remove all of the GX Pokemon, or all the non-GX Pokemon from Diego's side, then eventually he can just bring up an Altaria and just set up a checkmate.
And you got it right on the head right there, as Haze Slash is the attack being called from Drew, knocking out that Zapdos, taking the first prize of the game, and shuffling in that Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX, taking away that 150 damage that had been, you know, acquired across the span of 2 turns here from Diego. And Drew now feeling pretty confident, as he has no energy in play, but also has no damage in play as well, and is ahead by a single prize card. Diego, on the other hand, now playing a Cynthia and countering Drew's Stadium there. Diego has plenty of energy on the field, don't get me wrong, but is that going to be enough for him to press the advantage, or is Drew just so confident in his attacks, including something along the lines of like Haze Slash, that he'll just be able to comfortably take these final 5 prizes? That's really what the story of the game is so far.
Right. So just to see over on Drew's side, he has a lot of cards in his hand, and we mentioned this earlier at the start of the game when the Dedenne hit the bench. Diego had to discard 2 of those reset stamps, and this is kind of where we get into the nitty-gritty of how does Diego respond in situations like this, because he would really like some hand disruption along with knockouts, because you just saw your opponent get rid of 3 energy cards and one of their biggest attackers. If you could manipulate their hand from this stage, you'd be in a fantastic spot. Instead, he just has to go for these knockouts and hope that he can keep up. But honestly, a welder over from Drew's side in the following turns could be really, really difficult for Diego to combat.
Now, Diego, though, can start to apply some pressure while there's no energy on Drew's side of the field, right? If he can start being aggressive against some potential attackers from Drew, he can force Drew into some uncomfortable energy attachments, and that could be a way for him to start pulling ahead. But the reality is that Diego's at least a little bit behind when it comes to that damage race.
He had double custom catcher in his hand, and he just had to discard it because he's like, I could hurt a Mewtwo and Mew, or I could just take this knockout, and I honestly think he needs the knockout here. So going to have to get rid of that, and he will not have access to the bench at any point in this game now.
You know, I was wondering if he was going to go for the knockout on this active Pokemon, or if he was going to go for the Mewtwo and Mew attack. I felt like the Mewtwo and Mew attack might have been the correct way to go about things, even though obviously your opponent can just find another Mewtwo and Mew, and that's some sort of dangerous line of play that you can have there. But at the same time, it was very close, and Diego choosing to go after the active Pokemon instead, trying to take some quick prizes.
Yeah, huge miss here from Diego. He really wanted to find an energy switch off of that draw. Unfortunately, he was only able to find tag switch, which isn't going to help him out here. He's going to have to miss the knockout on this turn, and now we're just going to see Drew go off. He was able to find that welder. Now 3 energies out of nowhere, and he has so many choices of attacks from this point on.
The perfect setup here from Drew as he gets 3 energy in play out of nowhere. Really, he had no energy in play to begin his turn, and that welder just so powerful in this Mewtwo and Mew tag team deck, as now we have access to pretty much every attack on Drew's side of the field, including his discard pile, and choosing to deal 120 damage to Diego here.
Yep, he's using Tag Purge from his Latios GX during his opponent's next turn, prevent all effects done to this Pokemon by tag team Pokemon. So
it's damage, I believe, and not effects, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, prevent all damage, excuse me.
Yeah. Now, finally, we see this Pikachu and Zekrom GX have enough energy to start full blitzing. It's been a little bit of time, but Diego now is starting to work on all cylinders here as we find 3 energy for the bench Pikachu and Zekrom, or actually it's going to be for the bench to Alolan Raichu and Raichu.
Yep. So important clarification there from you, Josue. Of course, you were able to see no damage is going to come down, but does still get to accelerate those energy cards onto his new Alolan Raichu and Raichu tag team Pokemon.
Such a powerful attack from, well, Latios' attack from Mewtwo and Mew. And we just see the effect of Drew's deck in action, really. It's so beautiful to watch, as there's so many attacks that are just so interesting and situational. But if you have enough situational attacks for different situations, then if you can do the right one at the right time and you know your deck very well, then you're going to put yourself in an excellent position to win here, as we've seen how these 2 weeks of just pure play testing from Drew are starting to pay off, as he is pulling ahead in this race. Now, Diego, no slouch himself, has a lot of energy in play. He may not have any prizes taken, and he may not have any damage dealt on this Mewtwo and Mew tag team, but he has energies in play, and that can carry him a long way if he can find a way to really use them. It's all up to the sequence of attacks here from Drew and Diego. A very interesting thing about Diego's list was that he only played a couple of custom catchers, you know?
Yeah.
He didn't play the full suite of 4. So
well, Drew's list.
Well, yeah, you're right. Drew's list is the one that plays a couple of custom catchers, doesn't run the full suite of 4. So if he ever loses one, or if he ever runs out of one, then we're not going to see any kind of custom catcher action from either player on this in this game.
Yep, we've seen Diego. I believe he already has 2 or 3 custom catchers in his discard pile already, and I don't think that we're going to get to see anything else happen other than Diego going for this paralysis. It's pretty much the only play that he has. He's trying to avoid this Mewtwo being able to attack for a turn so that he can work through the Latios' attack effect, but he does have that Cobalion available to him, so that's going to remove that effect.
Yeah, that Cobalion, geez, man. See how situational this deck really is?
Right.
It has so many effects that are just not good enough on their own, particularly for you to stand to make a deck behind. But you add them all up, and then you start to see the power of what this tag team welder deck really, can really bring out. As we see Diego start to read that Cobalion.
Diego's like, wait.
Yeah, he did not expect that. I mean, you have the power of the rainbow energy, of course, bringing that metal energy, representing that metal energy on Mewtwo and Mew tag team, and now he will not have any special conditions on him, and that's just incredibly effective against something like a Alolan Raichu there.
Yeah, we're almost at checkmate at this point. Drew has set up a pretty perfect setup for himself. Has access to all these attacks, but of course, probably just going to be using that Latios's attack for the remainder of this game.
I wonder if he has a Dragonite GX in his discard pile.
Yeah, he could potentially set up a pretty big knockout here. He has 5 energies in play already.
If he has that Dragonite GX, he'll be able to use Sky Judgment and knock out that Alolan Raichu. He does have it.
Wow.
That is a huge Sky Judgment as we see a one-hit knockout on this tag team Pokemon. Huge knockout, huge play here from Drew as he gets rid of one of the most threatening Pokemon in Diego's side of the field and takes 3 prizes for it. Drew now down to 2 prizes against Diego's still remaining 6.
Yeah, and he just scoops it up. He knows that there's no answer for him here. He would have needed so many Electro Powers just to get through this one Mewtwo and Mew tag team. No way that he was going to be able to get through a second one, of course, and just going to save himself some time here and move on to game 2.
Huge Dragonite GX here from Drew. Right place, right time. We see how that Stage 2 GX found its way to be effective despite not actually being in play. That's the power of perfection for Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX.
It's a pretty amazing ability, and we've seen Mews of the past throughout our card game have some sort of effect like this, being able to copy different attacks or use other effects, and I feel like this is just, I mean, the name of the ability is perfect. Perfection. Like, this is the best it gets. And with all these different abilities that you have, all these different attacks, rather, even when we're in this new format, where we've seen a lot of cards drop out, Drew's found so many different attacks that he can really just work through tons and tons of matchups. And he played that flawlessly, able to set up that Cobalion right when the Raichu was able to get that paralysis. Diego falls right into the trap, and Drew just smiles and takes a huge Dragonite knockout for game.
I mean, you couldn't be more right. That was really pretty much flawless execution here from Drew. And we were now 1 game down from our first round here in the World Championships. And this is day 1. You know, this is all competitors are just hoping to get to an X2 record. So as long as you only give up 2 losses or the equivalent of, you're going to be able to make it to day 2 and start all over again from scratch, and you'll be at a 0-0 record. But still, this is a huge way to kick things off here if you're both Drew and Diego. Neither player wants to take a round 1 loss. Makes things that much more difficult before you can, on your path to making day 2. And it felt like Diego was, I don't want to say in the lead, but Diego was definitely feeling a little comfortable at getting a couple of attacks off from a 1 energy attacker, spreading his energy across the field. And we saw that that Mewtwo and Mew kind of shrugged it off and found a way to just completely dominate the game despite the fact that it took so much damage early on without really getting ahead on the board. That's just the power of Mewtwo and Mew tag team right there. Yep, Kyle.
Well, Diego starts us off right with that Cherish Ball. He has that Dedenne, so he's going to be able to get himself a new hand. We saw in the prize cards that he does have 2 Energy Switch that he will not have access to until he starts taking some knockouts. A little unfortunate, as that's really how you get that pretty aggressive start. You have to shuffle some energies from one Pokemon to the next so that you can start using Full Blitz. We'll see if he's able to find a different way to do that. Maybe he can find one of the 2 remaining energy switches from this hand. He does have 3 Lightning Energy in this opening hand, though, so he could discard a lot of these and set up. If he could find his Coco Prism Star, he's in an amazing spot. He just needs a few Pokemon to get those energies to, and we could see Diego have a huge setup.
Well, because of Dead A change, he does get 6 new cards, but I don't see... I see a Stadium Nav, and I see some... so he does have the Stadium Nav, which could find him that Thunderbound, right? But he doesn't have any Pokemon to go with it. I don't see a Radar to go with this either.
Yes, so
he has just sent Volkner here.
He has Volkner for Radar, and then he has Pokemon Communication, so he could get his Coco Prism out and get an energy to his Dedenne and to his Pikachu and Zekrom this turn if he so chooses. And it looks like that's the aggressive route that he wants to go with here.
Okay, so this is actually ending up to be a pretty solid start here from Diego. We'll have to take a look if he has the Thunder Mountain in his deck, or if it's in his prizes. Remember, he does have Stadium Nav to potentially find it, as long as he doesn't get unlucky there.
So depending on the strength of his hand, he could grab a different Pokemon, but I'm assuming that we will just see any Pokemon that he can use a communication on, and that is the play that we're going to see. He's just going to take that Pokemon, shuffle it back in, make sure that he gets that Cocoa Prism out as soon as possible, and he really just wants to accelerate these energies onto the board.
This is a really solid start here from Diego, actually. He's been able to maneuver what looked to be a handful of trainers into just an overwhelming start for himself.
Yeah, it looks
he
like
has those 2 Lightnings in his discard pile, which is just huge for him.
He's holding on to a Cynthia as well. He has an energy attachment for next turn. So if we see a Zeraora along with an energy switch, or even in that Thunder Nav, that Stadium Nav into a Thunder Mountain, we're definitely going to see a turn 2 knockout here with a bunch of energies accelerated. This is going to put our friend Drew on the back foot. He's going to have to find something for himself here, starting off with that Giant Hearth.
Yeah, Giant Hearth, finding himself a couple of fire energies. Solid stadium answer, or a solid stadium to begin your game and your turn with. But Drew is just looking at a field full of energies already, and his opponent's only taken the first turn of the game yet so far. So we can expect to see just a much different game here from Diego than we saw game 1. Even though Zapdos was dealing a lot of damage, it wasn't accelerating his field. It wasn't accelerating the energy on Diego's side of the field. So this time around, we're going to be seeing full Blitz GX and in action, as long as Diego's hand continues to cooperate with him. Now, Drew, on the other hand here, is starting to find his first Mewtwo and Mew tag team.
Drew's hand's amazing.
A Welder, right?
He has Welder, he has 2 fires, and I believe he also has that Rainbow energy.
Well, there's a Rainbow
if not,
that
he's got that one in his
right
hand
now.
too.
Yeah.
He's got the retreat available to him. He could just shut off the attacks from tag teams if he wanted to avoid the damage, or he could use that GX attack. Looks like he wants to get that 120 damage into play and avoid the damage from full Blitz. That's still pretty good. Unfortunately, Diego is going to be able to accelerate some energies onto the board.
Now, Diego having to deal with that explosive start here from Drew. Remember, that was Drew's first turn of the game, and he has 3 energy on that Mewtwo and Mew, and he dealt 120 damage. That's a huge way to kick things off.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, that's about as good as you can hope for if you're Drew.
And he didn't have many attacks to choose from either. Usually he's used to looking through his discard pile, picking one of those 10 attacks that he has available, but now he's just going to copy the benched Latios.
So now he does find that Thunder Mountain with that Stadium Nav, and he is going to replace that Giant Hearth and plays a Cynthia to find himself 6 new cards after attaching that energy onto that Pikachu and Zekrom. But, I mean, what do you do about this, Kyle? How do you get away from this? You have to find your custom catchers, right? Like, that's really the only way to go about it. That's only a temporary answer.
Right. You're not dealing with the major threat. Last time we got to see that Zapdos put in a lot of work getting some damage down, and it made Drew have to go with that awkward Greninja attack where he shuffled himself back into his deck and had to find another Welder to get going. But honestly, this is kind of how the matchup's going to go. Drew has a lot of answers. If he finds those answers, I feel like he answers the question every time.
The question becomes, what deck can he not answer? And will he be paired against it multiple times? Because it seems like he's just having a field day with what is likely to be the most popular deck in the tournament today.
Yep. His the one issue with Drew's deck is he plays a lot of weird Pokemon, and starting the tournament or starting a game can be pretty awkward if you start with a card like Cobalion or something like that. Something you don't want to start with, but he's been pretty fortunate to find that Mewtwo and Mew tag team pretty often.
And that really does come with the consistency of the deck, like we mentioned. Things like Mysterious Treasure, they're so impactful in when it comes to your consistency, right? Like, not only do you play Cherish Ball, but you also have other ways to find your Mewtwo and Mew, and it's a very powerful way to go about things. There's a lot of consistency in Drew's deck, despite the fact that it has so many potentially awful starting Pokemon. Now, will Drew continue to press on here? It looked like Diego had to change his game plan. Really, he couldn't become the explosive deck that he wanted to be here, and instead was forced to just pass with 120 damage on his Pokemon.
Yeah, it looks like Diego wasn't able to find himself a Zeraora from that draw, so he wasn't able to find any way to move out from the active spot and start to accelerate energies. He's just been that one card or that one turn short pretty often in the first game, and now following into the second game here. Meanwhile, we saw Drew, he missed on a Pokegear where he was not able to find a supporter card, but fortunately for him, he does have access to that Dedenne. We see the Cobalion come down as well, so we don't have to worry about that Alolan Raichu sneaking in and removing a lot of effect, removing those paralysis effects, and Dedenne's going to draw him 6 cards.
Little Dede change there, finding 6 new cards here for Drew. Now, the only key difference between this game and the last is that Drew was not able to use that GX attack to shut off Diego's GX attacks for the remainder of the game. Now, with that said, I believe that he's dealt enough early damage throughout his turn 1 attack to be able to potentially make that irrelevant. But we're gonna have to wait and see if not shutting off this GX attack is gonna potentially be threatening here for Drew, as we see a couple of custom catchers in Drew's hand actually, but he chooses not to play them, knocking out, I believe it was Dawnwing's Necrozma.
Yep, he's going to take that knockout, and we do see the Mewtwo and Mew tag team has 4 energies attached to it. He is setting up for potentially getting a huge Dragonite knockout in the following turns, and it looks like Diego was able to find a reset stamp here, so pretty important.
Couple of custom catchers.
Yeah.
Goes for that Cobalion.
This is how it starts to happen. He gets to bring Drew down to a lower hand. He's going to bring up that Cobalion, so paralysis could come into effect at some point in time.
Okay, so we're seeing the game plan start to come down for Diego, right? Like, so if he can knock out the Cobalion, then Drew ideally won't be able to get it back. If Drew can't get it back, then now Alolan Raichu and Raichu tag team will be able to start using its paralysis effects to potentially slow that Mewtwo and Mew down enough so that you can actually knock it out. If you can do so, then all of a sudden you're putting himself in a good spot. This is a much better opportunity than he had a couple of turns ago.
Yeah, he was able to find the Electro Power that's going to give him enough damage to knock out this Cobalion, and he did find the Alolan Raichu and Raichu tag team, so he does have access to getting all those energy cards in play and placing it onto that Pokemon. It sets him up for that paralysis that he's really going to be banking on to avoid that one turn from the Latios attack in this game.
We're seeing the game plan come into fruition here as Diego puts a couple of energy on that Raichu and Alolan Raichu tag team. Because of its tandem shock attack, he does threaten to just paralyze the Mewtwo and Mew. And remember, even though you prevent damage, you do not prevent effects. So that's one way for Drew to kind of be caught off guard there and actually have to take some damage from Diego's Pokemon. Will that be enough? You know, the story still remains to be told here. But it's a game plan, and it's a much better game plan than Diego was able to muster up last time around.
Yeah, last time Diego kind of just fell into the hole. He didn't have a choice. He had to just bank on that paralysis and hope that the Cobalion wasn't there. This time, he knows what he's up against. He was able to remove that Cobalion, and he could potentially set himself up in a great spot. That reset stamp did do a lot of damage. Looks like Drew does not have much going on for him. He's holding 4 energies and a card that gets him 3 energies. So I think we're going to see a lot of theme deck turns from Drew in the next following turns.
Well, it's a good thing for him. He's got some really powerful Pokemon in play and in his discard pile. So despite having, basically what you said is a theme deck turn, he's using some big time attacks that we would love to see in theme decks. In the future,
theme decks win games, man.
And that's really what it comes down to. Will Drew's attacks be enough? Even though his hand is definitely not going to be helping him out for the near future, will he be able to have enough firepower out of this Mewtwo and Mew to get himself out of this situation? Diego, on the other hand, already has a game plan, and we know that he's going to try to employ it in the next couple of turns. We can expect to potentially even see Diego use Tandem Shock on the following turn. But
oh, wow. Okay, he's going to be using his Naganadel. He's going to snipe off a Pokemon here and get himself 2 more prize cards.
Naganadel GX has the attack that deals 170 damage to any Pokemon in play.
Yep.
And he chose to knock out, I believe, was that Dedenne?
Yeah, I believe that was one of the 2 Dedennes. So he is set up to potentially snipe the last Dedenne and take those last 2 prize cards.
So only 2 prizes remaining here for Diego. Is this the point in time when you start to use Tandem Shock and just hope that Drew's hand isn't any better? Now, did Drew's hand improve from those 2 prizes he just took?
Well, we might be going on a lightning ride.
And actually, there's a reset stamp in Diego's hand as well. He may choose to just go with that reset stamp. And if he does, will he give Drew a brand new hand despite not, I mean, clearly he has no idea that Drew's hand is so bad, right?
Right.
So in his mind, he's thinking reset stamp is going to be the way to go. And it might actually save Drew in this case.
Well, he is going to be able to find himself that Zera Aura, so he does have free retreat now available to him. He could use that Dedenne as well if he wants to start to draw a few more cards. And he does have that setup with the tag switch, so he's going to be able to move those energies to the active Pokemon. And we're definitely going on a lightning ride. This is going to be 250 damage. Huge play here. Also has the reset stamp as well. So I think we may have seen Diego honestly have turned this around. Really just depends if Drew's able to find the right cards off of this. But honestly, what are the right cards? He's going to have 2 cards in his hand and nothing left on his board here.
We are going for a ride, Kyle. I did not expect that, actually. That Lightning Ride GX, you know, you forget that he actually can use GX attacks on in this particular game, and that's going to be enough to knock out Drew's Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX. It's going to allow him to not only take these 3 prizes, but also leave no energy on the field here for Drew. Drew, we've seen his hand just be awful before. Did the reset stamp help him out? It looks like it might have. I believe I see a coach trainer.
Yeah, he did not. He found a judge and a welder, but so awkward. He has the energies he could potentially find with the Giant Hearth, but do you just accelerate 2 energies onto your Latios at that point and hope that you can find a rainbow energy off of the welder?
I think Diego might have just pulled it off, Kyle. I really, really do. I think that this is just...
Well, here's the spot. So Diego promoted his Zapdos, and this is one of the few Pokemon that would be able to attack through the Latios' effect at this point. So if the welder is able to find the rainbow energy, he does 120 damage, knocks out this Zapdos, and the only thing that's left...
Doesn't Latios need like a certain amount of Pokemon in order to be able to attack?
Yeah, how does he get that many Pokemon into play? I think it's 4.
Yes, if you have 4 or fewer Pokemon, you cannot attack.
This would have to be a welder into a Dedenne into a bunch of Pokemon. Yeah, it looks like he's just going to use for 1.
There's a mysterious treasure.
He found mysterious treasure.
I don't think he can attack with the Latios this turn, Kyle.
Yeah, no, it seems super unlikely from this point forward.
He had an opportunity, but his hand is just not cooperating in the way he needed it to. I mean, it needed to be kind of like a sequence of perfect draws in order for that Latios to be able to attack this turn, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
It still does have that Mewtwo and Mew that he can bring up, and this will help him out as well as he can. He needs to just find something that can soak up damage. He has already absorbed the only GX attack of this game from Diego's side, so damage output is somewhat limited. You're probably not going to be one-shotted at this point, so he can absorb that, and it really just depends if Drew's going to be able to find the right attacks from this point on. If he can find something to help him out here, but it's going to be very tricky.
I believe we're witnessing a master class from a world champion in action right here, as Diego Cassiraga seems to be taking us to school here, showing us that despite the fact that Drew not only had an explosive a start as I think we're going to see this weekend, despite it only being round 1, despite all of this, despite the fact that Drew has access to so many things in his deck and discard pile, as we saw in Game 1, he found a way out of this messy situation, and now Diego seems to be one turn away from being able to take this to a Game 3.
Yeah, you have to think that that's it. That Tandem Shock was huge. It's going to prevent all these attacks from coming into play, even if they were able to happen. Going to use Custom Catcher for 2 cards to draw.
Jeez. Custom Catcher as a single card is just, you know, not exciting in the least bit. Coach Trainer finding 4 cards as he has his tag team as his active Pokemon. And that's it. He scoops them up. With only a little under 16 minutes remaining, we're going to be going to a Game 3, Kyle. And it looked so unlikely. If you would have asked me after Drew's turn 1, if I thought that there was any chance of us going to a game 3, I would have laughed in your face. I would have
Right.
told you that there's a better chance of pigs flying than this happening, because it seems so unlikely. 3 energy in play on your very first turn, and you start to deal 120 damage.
Right.
And you're not taking any damage from your opponent's Pokemon?
So let's revisit that opening turn then. Do you think that Drew should have just used his GX attack and removed Diego's GX attack from being available?
You know, hindsight's 20/20, so it's easy to say yes, right?
Right.
But at the same time, remember that he was being threatened from a potential full blitz on turn 2.
Right.
So if he takes that 150 damage from that full blitz potentially, or more obviously, then we're going to be seeing an entirely different game. But here's the thing: is that you're almost guaranteed not to be knocked out, right? With the exception of just some incredibly crazy things happening.
Yeah,
so if you don't get knocked out, the damage that you take on your Mewtwo and Mew tag team becomes a little bit more negligible, right? With the exception of you just have to start fearing things like Zapdos.
Yeah, it'd have to be Zapdos plus Electropower, or
Right.
the full blitz would have to take those energies and attach them to the Zero Aura. So it would have to be Diego adjusting his game plan at that point too, and it gets really tricky to see if that was the right play. But I mean,
I think the only way that I clear vision on turn 1 is if I have a guaranteed way to get my Greninja into my discard pile, and I can use the attack to shuffle my Mewtwo and Mew into my deck on turn 2. That way I can get a brand new Mewtwo and Mew on turn 3 with no damage on it that can start to lock the game out. If I can do that, at that point, I'll consider using clear vision. But other than that, I mean, really, it felt like Drew played it correctly. It just so happened that, Diego showed us that he's never going to be out of this game. He's too good of a player for him to be locked out by little tricks like that. And you can fool him once, but good luck fooling him twice.
absolutely. Well, let's take a peek over at the prize cards once again. It's gonna
Circuitry.
lose 2 of those energy switching effects. One of those is the tag switch. The other is energy switch.
Potentially
he does play
more
a
relevant is that
ton.
one of the custom catchers is prized as well, and he only plays 2.
Yep. Well, that's for Drew's side.
That,
Diego
wasn't
does,
that Drew? Oh, no, that wasn't Drew. You're right. Yeah.
So Diego has multiple.
One of
He
these
will-
days I'll get that right. All right, just an Altaria GX prize here for... this one was Drew, right?
Yes, you got
This
it.
one was Drew, right?
If the Altaria came down on the Pikachu and Zekrom, I'm just going to walk away.
You never know anymore, man.
That's right.
This brand new format comes with so many surprises.
We're going to jump into the action. Drew starting us off here. No.
And it looks like Diego now finding his... It looks like Diego's going to be going first, unless... Oh, nope, it is Drew's going first. The camera just tricked me.
It does a little spin.
That spin, man, I'm going to get used to it by the end of the weekend, I promise.
It took you on a lightning ride, for sure.
All right. Drew now starting things off for us, as he should, as he did lose game 2, and wisely chose to go first on this third and final game. Remember, only a little above 12 minutes remaining before we call time here on this first round. And both of these players want to avoid getting a draw as much as possible.
Look at this. He's going to start using the Reshiram and Charizard tag team. He doesn't have access to his Mewtwo and Mew, so he's going to just set up like one of those Greens Reshiram decks that we keep seeing. He's just going to go for maybe a double blaze or a flare strike in these opening turns.
Drew showing how different his deck can be, how special and unique the deck can be, as it can attack you from all angles, including from one of the more popular angles we're going to be seeing throughout the weekend. As I guarantee you that this is not going to be the last time we're going to be seeing Reshiram and Charizard Tag Team GX on the field over this weekend, as it is expected to be one of the most popular decks in the format. Obviously, in this particular case, it's just kind of like a support attacker.
Right.
Rarely seeing play, but in this particular case, if you can't find a Mewtwo and Mew tag team, you want to put the pressure on, so why not just do it with Old Faithful itself, Reshiram and Charizard tag team. Diego now starting his own first turn of the game, as Drew had an unexciting turn, if to say the least here, and now Diego hoping to kind of one-up things here, as he just wants to get as many energy in play again as possible, wants to threaten Drew and put a lot of pressure and not give him the ability to just kind of bounce out of this potentially poor turn and poor start from Drew.
This is such a safe route from Diego. He took a Dedenne and shuffled it back into the deck, grabbed a Pokemon just attached and used Cynthia. So if he's able to find a Dedenne off of this or some way to find it, as he does find it there, it does have a huge payout for him. It looks like he's able to counter the stadium as well. That's going to be amazing. Just removing that draw 3 effect from Drew's side of the field. And he could get aggressive here. It looks like that's going to be the plan.
Yeah, countering with Lysander Labs and then playing Dedenne, discarding one of the lightning energies to draw himself 6 new cards.
Is also able to get himself a lightning energy into the discard pile. And it looks like he found electromagnetic radar. So he could discard more lightning energies if he wanted to. Maybe find himself a Zeraora and a Dedenne, but it's going to hold off on that for just one more turn, being that he doesn't have an attack set up just yet.
So smart, so I guess
it's tamed.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of players would consider the option of electromagnetic radar and just kind of spin the wheel, you know,
right.
See where it lands. But instead, he sees, all right, cool. I have a nice setup for my following turn. I should be able to counter whatever he does, and let's just see what Drew can muster up, and then let's play accordingly.
Right, and if Diego ends up top decking one of the pieces that he would have grabbed with electromagnetic radar, that opens up other options for him. He could grab a different Pokemon as well, and he could find himself in an even better spot. So sometimes having the cards and not playing them can be the best play.
We're seeing 2 veterans of the game, 2 players who have been playing this game for many, many years, just duking it out here in the first round of this World Championships. And I would expect nothing less than top-tier gameplay from both, and that's exactly what we're getting. We're seeing just world-class gameplay from 2 competitors who I would not be surprised to see, you know, in, vying for, top 8 and for Championship Sunday berth.
Oh,
and both of these players just, want to start things off on the right foot. They do not want to get an early loss or an early draw, really. I think a draw is almost as bad as a loss here. About as close as you can get, of course. And both of these players hoping to not have that happen to them. But they're playing against world-class competition, Despite it being the World Championships, in some particular, against a reasonable percentage of the field, these players are so elite that they can consider themselves, to be the better player, that they consider themselves to have a pretty big edge when it comes to a skill gap. But in this case, both of these players just pretty evenly matched, and we're going to be seeing Flare Strike actually here from Drew on the second turn. So despite not having the ideal Pokemon, he still has an incredibly powerful attacker on his second turn and just knocks out this Tapu Koko before it can use its ability and start to accelerate Diego's energy. So that is one major weakness from Diego's strategy. And I just have to assume that Diego had no way to get it onto his bench.
Yeah, it was not going to happen. Just the way that his deck's built, it's a little more difficult to move around if you aren't in the second or third turn because you need energies and Zeraora to start switching around. It's not using that Jirachi engine that uses the skateboards and whatnot. So moving around is pretty difficult for him. And yeah, we will not be seeing any dancing with the Ancients from Mr. Coco. This time around, Diego's going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. He's going to need to find himself a Thunder Mountain if he wants to get an attack off that's relevant this turn.
He can still get off a full blitz on this turn, and it can still be incredibly powerful. But it's going to require a Thunder Mountain here, and if he doesn't find that Thunder Mountain, then we're just going to see a very, very one-sided game here out of Drew.
He had to do it again.
All right, here we go. Dead A change. Does he find it? Does he find a Thunder Mountain?
Whoa.
I think he did.
Yeah, all right.
All right, there is a Thunder Mountain right in his hand. This is huge for Diego, as if he would not find it or a way to find it, then he would have been in just incredibly awful shape, and it might have actually spelled the end for his match here. But right away, we saw that card in the window of his hand, one of the first cards we got to see out of Diego's hand, and that puts us right back into this game for both players. Cherish Ball now finding Diego any type of GX Pokemon, and looks like he's going for that Ultra Necrozma here. And, or I'm sorry, Dawnwing's Necrozma, yes. And we're going to be seeing a lot of Necrozmas throughout the weekend, by the way.
Yep.
It's going to be very easy to mess those up. But, yeah, we're going to be seeing that Necrozma come down. And
Lily.
Wow. Okay, so Lily as well now. 4 more cards here for Diego. Does he have anything outside of just a full blitz here? Doesn't seem like it. So now full blitz, finding 3 energies, and now we're going to have 5 energy in play here for Diego, as Drew Kennet has a lot of damage on this Reshiram and Charizard, but it's already starting to pay its dividends. He's down to 5 prizes opposed to Diego's 6, and he's going to be able to deal a whole lot of damage to this Pikachu and Zekrom GX.
Yep. So Diego did have a pretty fair amount of outs off of that Dedenne. He could have potentially found a Volkner to find himself that Thunder Mountain or a Stadium Nav, but he was able to find the raw Thunder Mountain, which was able to get him all these energies into play. Unfortunately, in doing so, using that Dedenne, he had to remove 2 reset stamps again, and we saw just how crucial that was in Game 2. Not going to have access to that for the remainder of this game, although we do only have 5 minutes plus 3 turns, so we'll see just how long a game we have left, honestly.
Yeah, with us being now down to 5 minutes remaining on the clock, it's going to be a little bit difficult for these guys to finish the game on time, but because there's so many tag team Pokemon in play for both sides of the field, anything can happen, and we can still realistically see this match end with there being a clear victor. However, time is running short, and it's of the essence here, so every turn is going to be very pivotal, and both of these players do not want to give anything away. Now, with that said, Reshiram and Charizard still has to find a way to be able to attack this turn if it wants to stay relevant. And I'm not sure if I like Drew's hand enough. There's a welder in it and an energy and a great potion, but beyond that, he's going to need some help here. He finds a couple of mysterious treasures.
Yeah, those aren't going to really move him forward. He would have loved...
Oh, there was 2 great potions, though. That might change things up a little bit. However, is he just going to deal 200 damage this turn? And
yeah, we'll see what he goes with. He's not going to have access to Flare Strike.
Right. With no access to Flare Strike, will he just use his GX attack to put some damage onto Pikachu and Zekrom and not get a knockout?
All right, yeah, he's just going to go with his Outrage and set up a little bit of chip damage on that Pikachu and Zekrom. Imagine if he had access to double Custom Catcher. Do you think he may have just not used his Great Potions and taken a huge knockout on like a card like Zeraora or Dedenne from that point? It's pretty tricky to move around in a stage like this, but it looks like he found a pretty good spot for him. Does have a lot of hit points to work with, and it's pretty awkward for Diego to get through this Reshiram and Charizard right now. He's going to have to find the right amount of cards or use a lot of resources and his GX attack to counter this.
I'm not going to lie to you, Kyle. There's a lot of options that he has available to him, and I don't know how much I like any of them, you know? Like, it's just an awkward spot to be in. For you to use both of your great potions, that means you're not going to have them available to you for the remainder of the game. But with that said, there's only a couple of turns left in the game anyways, right?
Right.
Not being able to maximize your damage output here with Reshiram and Charizard, and having your opponent potentially have some sort of a game-breaking play, like maybe a paralysis attack here from that.
Well, how do we feel about Lightning Ride? Maybe he could set up to take a huge knockout here, but wouldn't have access to a one-hit knockout on a Mewtwo and Mew tag team later in the game. He could definitely set that up for himself here.
I don't know.
Looks like he could also use his Pikachu and Zekrom's GX attack here now and take the knockout as well, and that's going to be the play here.
So here's the thing, is Diego's now down to 3 prizes, right? And I think Drew knew that this was going to happen, of course. So how do you get out of that with your current board state? Like, you just don't have the resources available to you anymore. You've lost so many energies. You dedicated so many resources to this Reshiram and Charizard, and now you're forced to just kind of use Mysterious Treasure a couple of times. Time is running out on the clock, and that could prove to be pivotal here, as Diego might not be able to take the final 3 prizes, but it's just, I don't know if this game plan is going to lead to a victory for Drew. I just don't think it will.
Yeah, Drew needed desperately to find himself a reasonable supporter or a Dedenne this turn, and unfortunately he just sees that he has the multiple Mysterious Treasures available to him. He can use those to thin his deck down as best as possible and maybe find himself a relevant supporter card here in the following turn. It really just depends on how he wants to go about this. He could use one of his tag team Pokemon to soak up damage, but the best play is honestly probably to let a GX Pokemon get knocked out and make your opponent play an 8-prize game.
Now, there being a little over a minute left on the clock, I think both of these players know that time is running low, and every play is going to matter so much more. Diego seems to be the only player that's in a position to win the game, and in that case, the match.
I love the way that Drew's playing this out. That he's making sure that he has the best odds possible to rip a supporter off the top of his deck. And that's really all you can ask for at this point. He's going to leave the Latios available for a knockout if Diego's able to find himself an Electro Power. And it really just depends if he has the cards right now to start closing this out. If he can take knockouts, especially this turn, he probably can do this in the right amount of time to save himself.
30 seconds remaining on the clock.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. He has double Custom Catcher.
Diego has double Custom Catcher in his hand?
Yeah.
He does have double Custom Catcher in his hand, but he only plays Cynthia, though.
He had the potential out to bring up the Mewtwo and Mew and use the Tandem Shock on it and paralyze it and leave it available for a knockout.
He chose not to go that route despite
your
Drew's
opponent just has a Mewtwo in hand.
Yeah, despite knowing your opponent only has a Mewtwo in hand.
Is there a more reasonable route here?
I don't know, Kyle. I know that time's just been called, though. Maybe the time pressure got to him. Maybe the fact that he knew that he only had, say, something along the lines. I mean, in his mind, he thought he probably had like a minute left or something.
So he does find the Electro Power. He has access to a knockout here. But if Mewtwo and Mew is promoted and he has no way to knock this out, he'd have to find double Custom Catcher again to win the game.
All right, he does get the knockout here on turn 0, basically. So Drew will be turn 1. And Diego is down to a single prize. Remember, Drew forcing Diego to play an 8-prize game here in a sense. Unless he can find double Custom Catcher, in which case he will be able to see one Custom Catcher in Diego's hand. If Diego can find double Custom Catcher, then we will see the game go to Diego, but with only one...
Oh, no, I think he's got that Volkner, so he would be able to find the Custom Catcher. Does he have the Electro Power as well to go with it? Because I believe he's going to be just short of a knockout, unless the Jirachi has enough hit points for him to take that. We're getting real close at this stage here. Is going to use his Solgaleo's attack and just accelerate some energies onto the board. Pretty irrelevant from where we're at this point, but you got to keep fighting it out.
Is this the final opportunity? We see a Volkner. Is this the final opportunity for Diego to close it out? We see the Custom Catcher. That's a second Custom Catcher. Custom Catcher's up to Jirachi, and that is the handshake. Drew Kennet extends the hand. Diego Cassiraga is going to be your victor here, as he does take this game on the final possible turn. Time had been called. He was down to his final turn remaining. He had that Volkner. He had the double Custom Catcher, and that was all she wrote right there. We have a clear winner as Drew is forced to extend the hand, and Diego Cassiraga starts things off with a 1-0 record coming into day 1 here at the World Championships. As close as it can possibly get, Kyle, and that's as exciting a way as we can ever start off a World Championship.
Yeah, that was incredible. The Jirachi did have 160 hit